Welcome everyone to another incredible Growth Seekers Leadership Mastermind. This is where we talk all things leadership. And leadership, the way we define it, is an interaction where influence happens, and it always begins with us. So, learning how to influence ourselves to take the actions that we need to take to have the lives that we want. And then also, once we become really effective at that, is to be able to influence others to take the actions that they need to take to have the lives that they want. And today the topic was tending the garden of your mind. Mike Santos, who's my co-facilitator here, came up with this topic. And I love this because, first of all, we have a lot of women here and women love gardening. So I think that there'll be some great insights from all the women here as well. And the idea that in our minds we have so many thoughts. And it's really interesting because the neuroscientists say that um, at any given time, we have roughly 70,000 thoughts per day. 80% of those thoughts are negative, and another 80% of those are the same thoughts we had yesterday. So, and I know that men love gardening too. We do, right? Because it's gardening. I think everybody loves gardening, but everybody hates the weeds. So when we talk about the idea that 70,000 thoughts and 80% of them are negative, that means we got lots of weeds in our thinking, right? So I wanted to set the table in the sense that there's two disciplines that I initially introduced to a lot of my coaching clients, the discipline of awareness and of acceptance. And so I wanted to kind of set the table with the importance of being able to know on any given moment what is, and then also to be able to be aware of how your garden is interpreting what's happening. And so what happens is that whenever something happens, the neuroscience, according to neuroscientists, we have this way that we only make conscious choices 5% of the time. 95% of our actual in the moment decisions are based on our subconscious. Our subconscious stores our memories in the form of feelings, nothing more than feeling. Doo-doo-doo. So we like to we're all these feeling emotions, right? We feel and then we think, and our thinking creates the emotions that influence our decision making process. So the decisions that we make or don't make ultimately end up being our reality. So it's so important to be a great tender of our minds, the garden of our minds. So in our minds we have a lot of thoughts. The and just to just to set the tone as well too, add something else in there. The ego. The ego is an interesting thing because it always gets a bad rap. And the reason why it gets a bad rap because it's always thinking about the past or the future. The ego is not your is not the now. The ego is always about the past and the future. And I love Eckhart Tolle's definition of the ego, the unobserved mind. So it's imagine this: you had a garden out in your backyard, and you never tended to it. You just let it grow. And I get some people do organic gardening, and I think some people do organic living with their tending of their own mind, right? Just whatever grows, right? Whatever thought they have, whatever feeling they have, they make decisions that way. But how do we get it to the point where we are managing a garden in a way that's effective, that's helping us to influence ourselves to take the actions we need to take, and then to be able to influence others? So yeah, so that's a big question of the day. That's what I put on the table. So Mike Santos, co-facilitator, what do you want to add to the table? What do you want to explore on the table of the things that I've just mentioned?
Thank you, Walter. I want to add, first of all, just to recap a little bit about this concept, right, of your mind being a garden and the thoughts, feelings, desires that you have are the seeds that you're planting in the garden. And also the concept that your current paradigm, likely that you picked up from family, social conditioning, and everything else in your life, is all the seeds that are currently planted in your garden. unless you've made a conscious choice along the way to plant new seeds. But either which way, you do have a garden in your mind. It's famously outlined in the book As a Man Thinketh. But either which way, recognize that thoughts are things. They start from a seed that you plant in your mind, and whether or not you're tending your garden, the garden of your mind, determines the quality of your thought. Like if you've ever, gone into a garden like Walter, you had mentioned, where someone just throws down some seeds and then just walks away, the probability of you getting a great harvest at the end of the season is fairly low, right? There's bugs are going to consume it. Maybe you're going to get some fungi rot. Maybe the seeds aren't even, maybe you want watermelon and you planted corn. Who knows, right? But the point is what I'd love to explore today with all of you and hear everybody's thoughts on this issue is how like how do you lead yourself in gardening the thoughts in your own mind, and how do you develop the patience to nurture that garden and water it and maintain it over time, and then subsequently what practices do you put in place to weed the garden, to protect it from pests and other things that may hurt the harvest, which is your intended outcome and desires. So I'd just like to put that on the table for everybody. And I'm curious. Yeah, please, Kasia, jump in there.
Good morning. I I feel I think at some point in of my life I have made a conscious decision that what I'm doing, this is my life, and this is my life by my design. And
Mhm.
thankfully enough, I came to that conclusion after so many years being lost and being managed by my mother in the way that I had no space to make my own decisions. I thought I had freedom, but I didn't. And at the moment when I was able to free myself, I realized that I can also um, create more and be more conscious about what I'm doing for myself in this concept of gardening as well. Those two things really match. So just remind I made the beautiful design with my picture on it and reminding me this, and just bringing that thought back to to the surface of my thoughts makes me smile and happy to get up every day. And I think we are you guys are expecting to say to explain so many theories or breathing or this or that. For me, this one thing changed my life. And I'm not saying I'm not looking forward to learn and to practice often on a daily basis different things that they would help me to make it more, to bring that more to the reality. But that just that one decision changed my life. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the one thing that's really important, and then we're going to go to Wolfgang in just one sec there, is understanding that in order to tend to your garden, which is in your mind, we need awareness. And awareness, as I've teach a lot of my young clients, is just noticing your thoughts, right? Noticing not only your thoughts, but also noticing what triggered those thoughts, right? Noticing what's happening in the moment, noticing how you're interpreting that moment. And it's so important because there's no such thing as stress reactions and no stress. There's only stress reactions. Two people could look at the same thing, and based on their thinking, one can actually go into stress reactions. Another one can actually use it as a learning opportunity and have a totally different experience of it. So noticing your thoughts and what's going on between your ears is so important. because it really does. We do view what's happening in the moment through filters, which Mark was talking about, the values, the experiences, the beliefs we have about life. Everything that we encounter in our moments do go through a filter, and that filter affects how we think, because the filter also is made up of the feelings that we have, right? So Wolfgang, and then Mark.
Thank you, Walter, for your comment before on organic gardening. What really made me aware that this means a lot. Organic garden, and it means to everybody something different. And also what you said, Mark, thank you for that comment. Um, Organic to me means naturally growing, and it actually takes a lot of effort to take weed out because there is no pesticides. And then there is the topic of it can be a lot of work and it can be overwhelmed. And so if I look at the garden in my wife, everything is organic. It goes organic with old seeds. So there is consciously old seeds. There is no GMO seeds in the garden. I mean, that's a lot of work because you have to exchange with people and talk to people and have conversations to actually know. She knows exactly where all the plants are coming from. What I heard, what you mean or what you said was what you said, Mark, I would say is careless gardening. Like you don't care. You put the things in the garden. You don't even care what it is. So even the carelessness has various layers. It can go up to stupidity. I mean, if you want to have watermelons and you grow corn accidentally, you simply have no idea what you're doing, accidentally or unorganized or whatever. But it really shows like organic and it comes up for everyone something different. And this is very, very key. What I do for my garden mentally is, and what I really, really emphasize, especially in masterminds, is what these original mastermind principles of you, Walter, describe, that we are non-judgmental, that we are not lecturing. And what makes me aware of these comments from the beginning and in the thinking what I have about organic gardening is the awareness that our lecturing and our judgment starts already with thinking and not even with talking. So when we are in each other's spaces, that already our thinking about something has an impact on it. And this awareness is very important for me, just to be aware of that. There is, I think in Hawaii, I heard of a tribe, and they go so far that they are aware that negativity is not out of actions. It's already starting in the thinking. And when they have a negative thought about somebody, that they even excuse about having had a negative thought, what sounds very ridiculous for some people, maybe. But in the reality, we masterminded about this week. Thoughts are things. Thoughts are the core of anything we influence in the outside. So I really love this depth of going into where does this where does this influence actually start to influence each other's gardens? And it's already the thinking, the careful, the mindfulness, which is something I will even more care about with which people I'm surrounded with. Are they meditating? Are they doing the work themselves? And that's actually feelable. It's feelable with who I'm surrounding with. And I think even sometimes I might numb myself and not to feel it and to be even more aware, open and audacious to make it a topic, specifically to myself. I think this is the most important thing with which people do we surround ourselves. Thanks for listening.
Mark.
Yeah, Wolfgang, those are some really great points that you're making. And I just want to bring it back to that conscious versus unconscious gardener, right? So if you're unconsciously incompetent and you're unaware that you're even a gardener of the thoughts in your own mind, then you're not even choosing to garden at all. You're not choosing to farm. You're just going with the flow of life and not really recognizing that the harvest that you're experiencing is the result of this garden run amok in your mind, right? And then the other thing that you brought up, which I want to highlight as well, is what tools are you using in your garden? Are you consciously planning your garden? Right? Are you consciously choosing the seeds that you're planting in your garden? Right? And those come in the form of desires and thoughts and emotions and a variety of different things. But what are you growing in your garden? And specifically also, what type of garden is it? Is it an industrial operation where you're managing acreage, or hectares of land in your mind to create some big, massive bumper crop in some particular area in your life? Or is it a backyard garden, where you're just nurturing it with love and care and tending it in this very small and precise way, but with love. And I guess you could love an industrial, multi-hectare garden as well. But the scale is the other thing to consider, right? What scale are you focused on? Are you focusing on gardening some, little backyard, or is it a multi-hectare deal? And then whatever it is, what crops are you planting? Right. And that can, and I'm very, at least in my mind, I'm very clear that it's all about the desires that you have for these different areas in your life. And what is it that you want to reap a harvest in? Do you like, Walter, you're always talking about relationships and maintaining connection. Is investing time and energy into the garden of your mind, is maintaining those relationships an important aspect to you? Or are you completely career focused or completely focused in some other direction, a hobby or whatever, right? So I think that these are all reflections of how we're tending our thought world and what crop we're going to get. And then I just want to add two more quick points, which is the thing that's incredible about gardening for anybody who hasn't done it. And Wolfgang, I don't know if you want to speak to this because I know you and your wife have a wonderful organic garden as well. But it's always amazing how you can just take these little seeds and plant them. And if you take care of them and you nurture it, it just blossoms into this big bumper crop of whatever it is you're growing, tomatoes, zucchinis, whatever it is. And you get this huge abundance from these little tiny seeds. And so I think like watermelons are obviously a lot bigger than, say, cherry tomatoes, but they all have value and they're all important in their own right. And the last point I wanted to make is what you touched on a little bit, Wolfgang, which was there's different types of gardens and there's different thinking behind the garden itself. And we have this sort of modern industrial, a, a lot or land allocation model in the modern era. But I've read a lot of books that talk about ancient cultures and First Nations and cultures and different perspectives, more traditional Aboriginal, where they saw all the land as being the garden, and they planted trees, and they're planting, places for, the whole entire experience, right? All of the land is the garden. So I just wanted to add that, but I ran my mouth, so
Yeah,
I'm complete.
no worries. Yeah, I just wanted to just to remind everyone as well too is that when people put up their hands, they have a thought, and if we talk too long, then they forget their thought. So just remember that we have a quick hour and we want to basically get to it. And also, I think the one thing is that the simpler we could keep our concepts, the more beneficial they'll be to each other. Because I think that one of the things I've learned in teaching some of the young teenagers is keeping it simple, the KISS principle, right? Get your thought, better keep it simple, because if it gets too complicated, not only will it get complicated for you, but it'll get complicated for everybody else. So let's put on, let's see what Miriam has to say, and then Kasha.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I just have a question. What if our garden that we carefully weeded out, carefully planted, and we have seeds, has been under attack by the boots of strangers from outside, smashing those seeds, smashing those young plants, and destroying our garden? What we do in that situation? What if there is an outside environment like flood, tsunami, fire attacking our garden, and we are in a situation or a chaotic situation? How are we going to save our crops? How are we going to actually continue weeding out and maintaining our garden? And this is what I've been thinking. And just, that I just had a journey coming back from the other side of the world. And I was thrown in that current, whatever flow you can call it. It's a negative flow, the current that, and it was funny because now you're discussing the garden, I was looking at it in a different way. But all I could keep when the chaos happened, when the attacks happens, just to be able to keep my head above the water. And the tools that, Mark, you were talking about, the only tools that at that time I could hold on to was my gratitude. My gratitude and that this shall pass, just not going to stay like this, and holding on so tight to that little, plant that I planted, and to not, be destroyed by this tsunami of this negative environment. But I would be open to hear your suggestions to how we're going to survive in the environment, because garden not only needs a gardener, garden also needs a sun, the light, also needs nutrients, also needs water, and tending to it is not just a one person's job. Like when you are thrown into that chaotic situation without a support of your mastermind groups. So imagine what would happen.
Yeah, and I think because I want to go to Kasha and your Gallum, and I think the one thing that's really important to understand too, even when you're gardening, there's so much that's not in your control. I think that's why I talk about the three business, our business, their business, and God's business. And I think that part of an effective gardening is learning how to stay within your business, what you have control over, the seeds you plant, the and also the way you water it, the way you tend it. Whether you have sun, whether you don't have rain, whether you have somebody come in and steal all the stuff in your garden, you don't have control over that. The only thing you ever have control over is the way that you react and the way that you manage your own personal garden. Because, like I said, we see everything through the filters. I take many athletes who thought they had their worst day ever, and all of a sudden you do realize that you're 13 and you realize that this is the path to mastery. I reframe things. What did you learn? There's always something that you can do to stay in your own business without getting into their business or God's business where you don't have any power, right? So that's one of the things. But see if anybody else had any thoughts. But Kasha, you had your hand up, and then your Gallum, and then Rianne.
So first of all, I would like to respond to Miriam. This year I planted in my garden a lot of lettuce, and it started growing, and it was so beautiful, of course, organic. And then at some point I realized my lettuce does not look good because it has like freaking holes. And for a while I was like, what the heck is going on with my lettuce? And then one day I saw little birds coming to my garden bed and picking on those lettuce leaves, taking a piece, flying to the retaining wall and enjoying that piece, eating it in the peaceful moment over there, coming back, picking up again. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And then when I saw this little cute bird coming and picking up those leaves, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeding not only myself, but also somebody else here. So I hope that, more and more of those moments when things they can trigger us, we can actually find the answer why something is happening in this way, because perhaps the ecosystem is needing a change. And going back to my original thoughts, I was writing questions. So, do you bonsai your garden, or you just care about your garden? And often people say you need to talk to your plants, and then from the biochemical perspective, when you talk to your plants, you are releasing you need oxygen, but your plants, they need something else to grow, right? So that conversation, it's a surface of connection, of care, love, right? But on the deeper quantum level or biochemical level, we are doing even more. Not always we are aware what are the other layers of care. And that conversation. It's
Awesome.
patient and conversation with everything, even with gardening, is the key. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Your Gallum.
Welcome back, Miriam. I want to say, I think the gardener and the garden gets better because I have seen a big shift in you, Miriam, and you just getting back, and trust me, your energy is as if you didn't go. So you got better. So for me, I would say the gardener and the garden gets better with different storms. So you good.
Awesome. Rayanne, and then Mark.
What I wanted to say is I have a garden, but this year, last year I spent a lot of time in the garden. And this year, every time there was weeds, I just plucked them out and planted something in their place. And I kept saying to my garden, this year I don't have as much time to spend with you because I'm out creating. And so you have to survive on your own. So I kept planting things that would survive on their own. So things like rosemary or kale or Swiss chard and everything just kept growing beautifully. So every time there was weeds, I just take that, throw something else and keep going. So I just wanted to say that having a hardy garden is fun because, then when the storms come and it can survive.
Yeah, and just before I go to Mark, I think the one thing that's really important in garden in our own thought world is the concept of acceptance. Because awareness is noticing what is in the moment and also noticing what your interpretation is of what's happening. And rather than letting your inner critic start beating you up, is allowing yourself to accept that I'm thinking this right now. It's okay. Like we all view the world through our filters of what we have. Sometimes it's just okay to accept yourself as you are in that moment. And then to know that, yeah, you can show up differently if you want to, but at this point, this is the way you're choosing to think about it, the way you're choosing to show up of. And in the end, you're gonna know, right? Because the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you notice that you're wanting a different result and you keep thinking and doing the same thing, well, that could be a real motivator for you to try something different, right? So don't beat yourself up for thinking the way you do. Accept yourself, but just know that you don't have to stay there. You have a choice, and that's what awareness is, a responsibility, knowing that you have a choice. But Mark, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what you were saying, Miriam. And the first thing I just want to say is just acknowledging that what you were dealing with is an extraordinarily complex situation, not only geopolitically, but personally for yourself because of the circumstances of that situation in your own family. Right. So I just would ask you to be kind to yourself, first of all. And I'm really happy to hear that gratitude helped through that moment, view the half full scenario versus half empty. And I think that gratitude is sort of one tool that you can use in the garden, right? And what I would suggest is I remember having a conversation with Wolfgang about his garden a few months back, and he had some, I think it was wild animals in the forest that were coming and eating his garden, much like you're talking about. He's dealing with environmental conditions, right? And as a result, he ended up building a stronger fence around his garden. So the fence can be a tool as well. And maybe if you're dealing with floods, for example, next time you'll elevate your plants, right? So there's different tools, and I guess what I'm really trying to do is suggest to reframe the situation in terms of what did I learn from this experience and what tools or resources or systems can I put in place so the next time I'm dealing with that adversity, that my garden is better equipped to handle it, much like Ray's talking about. Maybe you need a hardier garden, or maybe we need to do aquaponics and it's a floating garden. I mean, I don't know, but what I would suggest is like what Walter was saying is that developing that mental resilience, developing mental tools, whether it be prayer, meditation, affirmation, and or looking at the different tools that you can bring into your garden is going to strengthen and create more resilience in the face of that adversity, right? And I guess like I said, I don't want to minimize by any means the complexity of this challenge that you are facing. That being said, I think if you can view it through the lens of, I must be an extraordinarily strong human being to be able to go through all of this and still come out and be smiling, like Gigi was saying a moment ago, and you're still got it all together, right? Now, you may not feel that way on the inside all the time, but sitting on the outside looking in, I thought it was brave for you to even get on a plane and go. Right. So I just want to acknowledge that and say that I think you're amazing. Um, and I think you're becoming each one of these challenges that you overcome is just making you a more effective gardener.
Yeah.
I'm complete.
Yeah, it's and I know Miriam, you got something to say to respond to that.
No, Walter, I need your help as far as question. I
Okay.
found myself dropping to the lower energy, and I was observing that, like you say, you observing, and that was like anger, and it was hard to get out of it. What do you suggest? I mean, like, because everybody around me was in that level of energy.
Yeah, I think that catabolic energy is it's very contagious, and the neuroscientists have just recently I was hearing a neuroscientist saying that they've done some studies and stress reactions can be contagious. So I think that the one thing that we have to understand is that whenever we're in a catabolic environment, if we're not aware of how we're feeling and thinking, we could easily like there's a tuning, the tuning fork when they do with music that if it's a catabolic thing, then what happens is that we start to kind of get in line energetically with everyone else. And I think that's what's really important is really having some awareness, noticing yourself, noticing how you're feeling, and also really working hard at getting yourself back to base level through your breathing. And I know we just lost Wolfgang here, but there's a lot of power in just breathing and just even accepting whatever thoughts you're having in that moment, not rating them as good or bad. They just are. Because that's even when you're doing a garden, there are certain things that you have to accept when you're gardening. You have to accept that weeds are gonna grow, wind is gonna happen. Sometimes animals might get into your garden, right? And um, where there's a couple of things. Number one, I think that with emotions, their energy and motion, we're supposed to have them. That's what makes us human. We're just not supposed to become them, right? So it's okay to get angry, but it's not beneficial to stay angry, right? And so I think that when you also take emotions, take some time to explore them. What I've noticed that quite often at the root of anger is sadness and fear. Sadness and fear there, and because you think about what's below level two, level one, right? Right. So quite often the what we're feeling anger is really more of a sadness, right? You think about just even in a situation there, how many people have lost loved ones? How many people are afraid that things aren't going to get the same or that they're going to get worse, right? And anger is a self-protection response to that, right? Because not everybody wants to just walk around sad and depressed all day, so they get angry because that fuels something. And the one thing that happens when people get angry, they look for they want something to control, right? Like sometimes people just get out on the streets. They don't know what they're going to do, but if they get enough people out on the streets, they feel like they might have an influence somewhere, right? So I think that that's really important. I think the other thing that's also really important is to know that emotions are really indicators of what's going on for us in the moment. Like I said, people are not there to make us happy or unhappy. Situations are not there to make us happy or unhappy. They're just elevating our level of consciousness to where we are in the process. What wounds do we still need to heal from? What areas do we still need to grow in? And acceptance, resilience without acceptance is futile. It's really hard to be resilient without accepting things as they are. And that doesn't mean that you agree with what's happening or that you believe what's happening is good. It just means that it is what it is. It's one of those, it's either their business or God's business, and you are not going to give it energy because that takes away from the way that you're showing up. So part of it is accepting that there are things that are not in our control. If all of a sudden you have a windy day, right? If you have a windy day and all of a sudden your nice flowers that you had are all losing their petals, right? You could sit there and get angry about it, but whatever you resist persists, right? So then you'll notice you'll have an angry minute, and you'll have an angry 10 minutes, and next thing you know is you have an angry day, and everybody around you gets your level 2 catabolic response. So, but when you start to accept, okay, oh, it's a windy day. Okay, well, I guess it's time for my flowers to depetal themselves, right? And just, you know what? It's that's life. Sometimes I was talking to a friend of mine right now. She just lost her mom. Last year, she lost her husband, and she's turning 59. So my only thing when I called her up, I said, first of all, I sang her the happy birthday song. And then I said, isn't life interesting? She goes, yeah. I go, shit always happens, doesn't it? And she agreed with me. Shit always happens, right? You have a garden, shit's going to happen, right? If you have your thoughts, right? The only constant in life is change. Something else is going to happen, right? If things are going well, enjoy it because tomorrow they might not go as well, right? So the only thing we could really manage is the way that we show up in the moment. That's why the idea that life is not as personal as we think it is, but we are responsible for more than we think we are. We are responsible for how we show up. Even if you're in a room full of angry people, that doesn't mean that you have to be angry too. It just means that everybody else is angry. And if you want to show up as an angry person, you could. Or if you want to show up as someone who is not angry, you can do that as well. Mark.
Yeah, Walter, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And I just want to add that as a gardener, Miriam, a really incredible tool that I've been playing with and exploring since we last connected, because you've been gone for the last couple of months, is the transformer. Okay, so and emotion, in fact, really all energy is in motion, right? And it can't be created or destroyed, but it can be transferred from one state to another. So when you're in an environment like you were, where there's a lot of anger or hate or any emotional state that you're bathing in effect, because it was impossible. I mean, there's fear, there's all sorts of really intense energy going on, emotional energy, for all sorts of complex reasons that are seemingly far outside of your control. All right. Like it's all everybody else thinking these crazy thoughts. And what am I doing? I'm in this environment. One really empowering tool is recognizing that you and your consciousness is a transformer. you can choose to transform the energy that you receive, and you can broadcast it back in any other emotional state. So, for example, you may receive anger, and you can respond and transmit back in the vibration of fear, right? Because maybe these people are going to attack me, hurt me, whatever, right? But you can also choose to respond from a vibration of love or joy or even peace and enlightenment. And the thing that's really powerful when you look at the power versus force chart is that all of the most vile forms of energy that I know that you don't want to experience are all very weak relative and in comparison to those higher energies. So my point is that maybe love's up here at, 10,000 volts, and this hate that you're experiencing or this fear or whatever, it's maybe a 12-volt circuit. You as a transformer operating at love can easily handle 12 volts, right? Because you're a 10,000 volt transformer. And so choosing to respond and whatever you receive, transmit back in the vibration that you want in that moment is one tool to navigate through those challenging circumstances. So in effect, what happens is the energy that comes to you actually empowers you, even if it is negative energy, because you can transform it. It may be weak, but it doesn't matter because you're going to respond back at a higher vibration than what you're receiving.
And I know you got her juices going, so she's got something to say. So Miriam,
Yeah.
what's coming up for you?
Actually, the two things that, one Walter says and one Mark says is very true. Anger underneath of it is sadness and fear. And the first 2 weeks, I was crying every day. And not in front of others because I was supposed to give them, energy and everything. I was finding, moments alone to just cry. I was really sad. And then the thing that, of course, we didn't have this discussion, but the energy of love, it helped me to bring me back to the gratitude. And then I was unconsciously, I was actually transferring that, was the loving the nature, loving, the trees, loving people, and really feeling that love. And I did start while I was there, I did accomplish a lot of things, I think, giving myself a credit. Because I'm having homeless project for my Global Enlightenment Academy, and I did actually start over there, and that transferring my frustration and anger into doing something. So I went and I did that, and I engaged other people with me to go and help the homeless, not homeless in that area, was like more like a poor neighborhood area that I. So that was the transference that you're talking about, Mark. That was the only thing I could think of that could relieve me from that frustration. So it's very true. And then another thing that I'm kind of thinking as far as a lesson, being prepared. Like if we know the garden is going to be attacked, so be prepared, put the fences up, have the tools that we need. And I was not prepared. Anticipate the attacks, anticipate, the challenges that will come our way. And I don't think, it was sudden thing that happened and I wasn't really prepared. And then one thing after another happened. Since I was there, I was just like throwing back here and there from one stress to another stress. My uncle passed away. I had to go to the funeral for my uncle. It's a whole lot of things that happened. So before I be able to take a breath, I was throwing into these different chaotic situations. But you're absolutely right. Transferring our anger into love, and exactly what you both were talking about. And I wasn't consciously doing it, but I found a way to feel more calm by loving other people, by, feeling that, these innocent people, they just don't know any other way, any better way. So just show the love no matter what.
Yeah, you'll find that there's a thing called energy alchemy, right? Where you're basically what you're doing is you energy you can't destroy or create. All you could do is shift or transform. And energy alchemy is where you're able to take some of the lower level of energy, because energy is neither good nor bad. It has its purpose, and I think that some of the lower energies, like level ones and twos, really is about self protection, survival, security issues. So whenever our ego or our self-perception of who we think we are is under threat or perceived threat, we're going to have those feelings, those thoughts, and those feelings and thoughts will transmute the energy that is all part of who we are, right? Because we're energetic beings having a human experience of cause and effect. We have thoughts, we have feelings. We're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, but we do have to be aware that our thoughts and feelings are what affect our energy, right? Because the minute we take something personal, we're going to find our body's going to respond to it. It's going to release some adrenaline, some cortisol. You start to get tighter, you start to feel heavy. Life feels heavy, and the minute you start to transmute it or start to do the energy alchemy, it's like being on that hot air balloon where you're starting to cut off the weights and you're starting to rise a bit and you're starting to see things from a different perspective. And that's why awareness is such a powerful tool, because awareness allows you to realize that you do have a choice, that it's not what happens to you it's not what happens to you that you're reacting to, it's what you believe happens, and what is happening is what you're reacting to. And if you can get to the point where you realize that you have this tool called your mind and also your body, and then this thing called your body, it stores all your past in the form of feelings. um, here's an interesting thought. Maybe our subconscious is the unknown garden, right? The unobserved garden, right? We think that everything that we're gardening, we actually think that our gardening is happening at our conscious level, but maybe it's the gardening has to be at the subconscious level, because that's why Carl Jung said, unless you make your subconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. And the majority of the world um, believe that it's all fate, right? And that's why I believe that God hates pity parties, because he's given us the superpower called a conscious choice. And when we don't use the tools that we have to really start to and even the emotions that he's given us to give us data, when we don't get curious about why we're feeling what we're feeling and why we're thinking what we're thinking, we're allowing that subconscious garden to just kind of grow wild. And next thing you know is, right, the neuroscientists, we think, we feel, think, react, feel, think, and react. And we create this personality, right? And this personality of thinking, feeling, and reacting causes decisions that ultimately gives us the reality that we experience. Not only we experience, but also other people experience in relationship to how we engage with them. So yeah, so maybe the garden is the subconscious. Maybe that's where we should be looking for, right? And that's where all our emotional owies are, all our moral wounding, all the things that truly affect our lives, are in the subconscious. So the next question is, how do we get there, right? How do we go tend something that we're not even aware of, right? it's $100,000 question. I do know that watching the thinker is one way of doing it. Sometimes just observing what thoughts you're having. Asking inquiry, self-inquiry. Well, why am I feeling this way? Is it really about this? Am I really upset at Rianne, or is it a mommy issue for me? Right? Is it something that right? Is it was me rebelling against my mom? Why I'm rebelling against Rianne? I don't know. Sometimes it probably is. I don't know. Who knows, right? But yeah, it's a daddy issue, right? Where's my daddy, right? Like who knows, right? Our subconscious, we've got
You were born with it.
yeah, I don't know. We have so many things that we don't even aware of. So maybe if we go a little deeper, maybe the garden is our subconscious, and that's where I think self-inquiry. That's where I think having mentors, having coaches, having people in our success posse who love us enough to tell us the truth, right? Because we with our minds we can lie to ourselves, deceive ourselves, right? Convince ourselves of the truth. I mean, so one of the definitions of evil is someone who tells lies and then believes the lies is their truth, right? Sometimes we can be evil with ourselves. We're believing a lie about ourselves, and then we think that's the truth, right? That's why we need a success posse. Mark and then Rand.
Yeah, there's just so much there. I couldn't agree more, Walter, with the subconscious being the garden. We can attempt to consciously garden, but there's so many corners of the garden with so many different weeds and also fruit in abundance just waiting for us to access, and I think it is an endeavor, and there's probably a million tools to use that, and having great masterminds like this one today, and coaches, mentors, leaders, studying, reading, authors. I mean, there's just so many ways to learn, but I think the objective is to expand the conscious awareness. And one last point I just wanted to make too about this transformer idea as being one tool in the garden that we were talking about earlier, Miriam, is that there's this biblical principle, which is you'll never be given a challenge you can't overcome. Right. And I've been thinking a lot about that with this transformer idea, and it makes so much sense to me now, being that everything is energy. Therefore, everything you're experiencing, including the challenge, is energy. And within the challenge itself, it has the energy necessary for you to overcome it. Right. So it's just changing the way you view the obstacle. Instead of viewing it as a obstacle, you could view it as the source of the energy necessary to overcome the challenge, whatever the challenge may be. And that's just sort of viewing it as a lesson versus a failure or whatever, right? But either which way, the obstacle itself has all the energy that you need to overcome it. You just have to transform it from its current state into your desired state.
Yeah. Hey guys, we're 9 minutes over. So if Rayanne, if you have something quick to
Yeah,
finish
I have
with,
some quick.
okay.
What I wanted to say was that in the last couple of days, Walter said, let's watch some quality TV. So he subscribed to Angel Studios. And anyways, we watched this movie, The Shift, which basically was incredible because it was a Job-like story, and this guy overcame, and it was really cool. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It took the concept of multi-universes and how basically it had the devil as the benefactor, and basically he shifted people into different realities. And there was a woman he was in love with, and yeah, he was searching for her, right? So, and it's interesting. It's a quality story about a man and the girl that he has to chase in multi universes. So there's kind of like a sci-fi It had a little Christian theme to it, but it was just really crazy. It's the first movie I haven't had to stop watching because it's interesting enough, right? Uh, Miriam and then Kasha, and then we'll have to say goodbye.
I wanted to thank everyone. I really appreciate this conversation, the mastermind that we have. And also now looking back, we're talking about the energy, the higher energy. And I was consciously aware that we need to bring the joy energy into our situation. And at least with my own family, every night we started, and I was just like jokingly, everybody had to say a joke or something, make everybody laugh. And I say, whoever can make everyone laugh, not just only me, I was giving them $1. So yeah, actually worked, and it kind of changed the atmosphere. At least at the end of the night, I was able to take control of our emotions and then go to bed, peacefully. And then now that I'm looking back, oh, I did that. And I was writing in my journal today that even though I was not prepared and I thought I was able to handle it better, and I felt that I didn't, because I felt angry most of the time. But even if I planted a little seed in the minds of even one person during while I was there, and I was there only 5 weeks, that could have been a success as well. And
Awesome.
yeah, I'm looking at it that way.
Awesome. Kasha, what are your parting thoughts?
First of all, I would like to tell you, Miriam, that I hope you brought enough $1 bills with you to your trip, so you could pay a lot. And my final thought is, I don't like to overcome challenges. I don't like this overcoming. I think it sounds complicated and hard to do. And I prefer another statement, finding the path. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Mark, did you have some parting words before we say goodbye?
I just want to say thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed this today, and it was great to connect with you once again. And until next time.
Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. And until we chat again, bye for now.